part of the neural or even non-neural anatomy. It's a field. It's like a magnetic field or an electric field in some respects, in the respects of a field, but it's non-local, even though it appears to be somewhat centered around the actual individual. It may be what some people call the aura, but it also has tentacles, if you would, that extend through time and space to infinity. Look exactly the same. And I did find out how the acupuncture system works. There have been a number of people that the acupuncture system is very interesting. What we did is we injected radioactive potassium into each acupuncture point while the person was under a high-speed CAT scan machine, and we found that the radioactivity moved directly to the organ associated with that point for the 3,300 years that the Neijing has been around talking about it, and for the 6,200 years that our Vedic medicine has been talking about it. So we found there was a direct correlation to the, not only to the organ system, but to actual parts of it. For example, down the outside of the thumb, you have a point that gives you information about the entire lymphatic system just below the first joint, but above the first joint it talks about the lymphatics that are in the tonsillary ring. And when we inject here, the radioactive material goes to the tonsillary ring. We inject here, it goes to the whole lymphatic system. And you go down and it goes on down the body. And the same thing, as you work across the hand, you have lymph and lung and circulation and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Come over here and you have the heart and the small intestine. And you can go down and inject here, and it goes to the mitral valve. Here it goes to the aorta. Here it goes to the, this chamber, that chamber, et cetera, et cetera. Then you go down on the feet. The acupuncture points to the same thing. We also found that the acupuncture points, the acupuncture meridians, aren't veins, aren't vessels. The acupuncture meridians, as they're called, aren't really meridians. They're made up of if you've ever cleaned a game animal or a chicken, you'll notice that between the organs, or done surgery, between the organs is a white filmy layer. That layer is built up like a baklava. It's built up in a number of layers, and each of those layers is a capacitive, conductive surface, not meant for conducting materials such as radioactive potassium, but it works as does anything in the body. The body's a biological mechanism. It works like the intestine does peristaltically, like the heart does peristaltically, and it's ionic in nature, so it's polarized, and so it pulsates and moves information. So that system was an information system, and the points are just above and below each joint, and you have them down each side of the hand. They're around at an area that's about 45-degree angle toward the finger, and you can take something like a ballpoint pen. You can take just not the point of the pen, but the point of the case, and you can probe about 45-degree angle just above and below each joint. And most people don't know there's a joint just like this joint and this joint and this joint right down here at the wrist, and you can probe those places, and on ones where you're having a problem with the organ or organ system, you'll find a little hard nodule under the skin just above and below the joint, and if you rub back and forth past those, one palpate like it were a little grain of rice filled with a coarse sand, and so you can tell where you have a problem. Now, and if you take a piece of metal and do the same thing, different points will feel differently, because the metal things tends to discharge an excess of electric field there, and the plastic would tend to charge up a point of extra field there. And it turns out there's a type of material called an electret. An electret is to electric field like a magnet is to magnetic field. So there's a way of putting a permanent electric charge on a piece of plastic. If you do that on your fingers and on your feet, you'll feel really, really good. It'll normally alleviate almost any problem you have. And that's what an acupuncturist does. They can find where those places are that you need to have a treatment and do it that way. Another way to do it is to use an acupuncture needle and stick it into the point to charge it or discharge it. Turns out that these points, like this is the lymphatic system here, and this is the lung system here. And if you go clear to the end of where, and there are points up the body, if you go clear to the end of where that meridian is, they all end at a tooth root. The teeth are piezoelectric. When you squeeze a piezoelectric material, it generates a voltage.
Charge.
Or if you take a piece of piezoelectric material and apply a voltage, it expands or contracts. The teeth are piezoelectric. So that's why you should take very good care of your teeth. And don't get a root canal unless you absolutely have to have it. And not that you'll die, but your health will go down. And so there's some things that we have. These little devices will make up for that and will charge you up. And so especially people who are missing a lot of teeth.
So you're saying that the tissues around the organs have an ionic transfer system, which is
to the organ, not that they're around the organ, but they go all the way up the body. If you start stripping out neural tissue, in fact, it's a kind of an interesting thing. Most people don't know, but lions and tigers never eat muscle tissue. It's highly toxic. They strip out the blood veins, the vessels, the neural tissue. They eat intestines, and they eat, the heart and the internal organs. They don't eat muscle tissue.
Really?
Yep. If they feed them muscle tissue and they only give them muscle tissue, they'll eat it, but they get very ill. It's very highly toxic.
This is not the typical nervous system you're talking about with sodium.
No, there's no nervous system there. That's what I'm
Right.
saying. It's a completely different system. We found how it worked because we injected the radioactive potassium, and then we looked at it and watched it go through the body. And it goes exceedingly fast. If you took blood from the tip of this finger and traced it back to the heart, it doesn't move very fast. It moves very, very slowly. It doesn't race through your veins. It jerks too. But if you inject the radioactive potassium here, we had to get a higher speed CAT scan machine to even see it. It really races.
Now you're saying this is all happening with some interface with the consciousness field or the information field?
Informational field. What I'm saying is that problems in the organ manifest themselves both physically and informationally at the appropriate points on the body. So let's assume that somehow, whether divinely or by genetics, we were designed. Why not design a system where you could test the thing? I mean, we don't come with an operator's manual, but maybe we come with a system that is very easy for us to find out what the problem is and then alter things. Now, one thing we found out is that every substance has an informational field around it. We found out that a way to take that substance, place it on a device, and from the device find a numerical signature for that information field. Then we found a way, therefore, to store it in a computer. Now we can take the computer and run that information back out and generate an informational field. We can make that field large so it surrounds the body, and we can then measure in real time at these points, most of which are acupuncture points and some aren't. Make a signature of the compound, and what happens is the body will react to that informational field as if you had given the person that substance. And so you can go to an acupuncture point and get information from it that you can graph and chart on a machine, and it will tell you whether that organ is in a type of inflammatory process or in a degenerative process, and how much, how long it's been there, whether it's winning the battle or losing the battle. And then you can put the person in an informational field from a substance that you think may solve that problem, and ask the body, and the body will react exactly as if you'd given that substance, so you can select a type of treatment.
When somebody is given a placebo, are they affecting their own informational field?
Absolutely. You talk to placebos work 50% of the time. And it isn't because placebos have a physical effect. They have a mental effect in some instances, and they have an informational effect in some instances.
So you should be able to affect your own informational field.
So, yes, people ask me when I built these very complex computerized machines that do the diagnosis and selection of treatment, they ask me, what's your goal for this machine? And I said, my goal is when the doctor throws the thing in the Dipsy dumpster and just does it. And that can be done. However, the machine takes away his emotional state and his emotional interference with it, and the patient's emotional state and the patient's emotional characteristics with it. But one of the machines that I want to come out with in the future is one that's a biofeedback device that allows the patient to put himself in an informational or mental state that affects the problem with the body. And it can be done. It's easily be done. And other than gross poisoning or gross overconsumption of something,
A lot of people are going to want to know, is anybody using this technology?
there are, right now in the United States that I know of, 18,000 clinics.
18,000?
18,000 clinics using this technology. I taught 7 companies how to make it. About 5 other companies came in and stole the information from them, which if they'd come and asked me, I'd have handed it to them. Because I knew it was going to need 20 or 25 years out there before it got itself established. And so what I did was I let other people do it, and I ran around in front of them like the man that runs in front of a curling iron and sweeping a pathway for it. I went around in front of them sweeping a pathway in front of the FDA, and I spent a lot of money and a lot of time and effort and got this device actually approved. And so I'm now ready, after 28 years of having this device out there, and about somewhere between, probably 1.2 to 4 million or maybe more patient visits behind it, all computerized. In the medical terminology, it's anecdotal, because the patient can't tell you if they're well or they don't have the symptom any longer. That's illegal. But I'm now ready to go up against any one of them, because I can prove that my diagnoses with this type of machine are absolutely correct, because when they go look with conventional diagnostic tools and equipment, I'll see the problem as much as 20 years before it manifests itself in the body, where common medical things can test it. How can I prove that? Well, I wait 20 years and prove it. That's what we've done. That's why I have 27 years of testing done on it. That's why I have people that came and thought it was a fraud and didn't accept the medication, but I watched them over a period of time and saw them eventually die of what I told them they would die from. So I now have enough evidence. I'm ready to go and do that, except I'm not going to do that because I don't have any desire to be assassinated. But I have people that have more testicles than I have that are willing to do it. Pardon my 10 years in the Marine Corps.
You said there's a lot of clones of this technology out there. People have stolen it from you, and
they didn't steal it from me. They stole it from other people. I gave it away, so they couldn't steal it from me. If they'd come to me, I'd have given it to them.
Is it variable in terms of how well they work?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And he can dial up on the machine now some 850,000 different substances that are in this world. All the medications of every medical system known, all the herbals of every herbal system known, all the magic healing potions of every magic healing potion system known, all the chemicals that are out there that are man-made, all the chemicals that you find in nature, all the vitamins, all the minerals, all the pharmaceuticals in the homeopathic pharmacopoeia and in the allopathic pharmacopoeia. Everything's there. So You can go to the machine will help you sort those out and find out exactly what will alleviate the problem. And many times you'll find something that will alleviate a problem in the for example, the small intestine, but find that it'll aggravate the neural system. So you say, oh, well, there must be another medication that'll work and not counteract something here. So you can go back and find that particular medication. Now you know what to give. Now you can ask it, okay, if I'm going to give this, how much should I give? It'll tell you an exact amount. And like everything in nature, there's a bell curve produced, a curve that looks like a bell, and you want that medication that's right at the peak of the bell curve. You want just that amount that'll produce that reaction. And bang, you give it. And many times when we give the medications to a patient, they'll bounce up and down like they were at Disneyland on Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. And all of a sudden they go, oh, I've had that pain for 20 years and now it's gone. Did we heal them? No. Did we cure them? No. Why do I say no? Because it's against the law. Did they believe they were healed? Yes. Did they believe they were cured? Yes. What makes the difference? Again, I'm building a laboratory and a factory where I will produce these, and instead of having to do like you have to do today, to pay between $12,000 and $50,000 for one of the machines, I've got one that's built in a fountain pen, and we'll probably sell it for around $99.
Wow.
But there are similar healing modalities in existence. Which is
there are some that work beautifully.
Radionics.
But there are radionics machines that.
I'm not saying it's the same. I'm just saying that it's something that works.
Yeah, works very well. Works very well, and it works with the. Yes, exactly right. It works through the informational field.
But people can also, as you said, massage these points on their hand.
Best medical machine ever invented were these two little things we call acucombs that you just rub your points with and get well.
Is there a way people could build those on their own?
They probably could as soon as they saw one, but it's easier and cheaper to buy one for me because I've paid thousands of dollars for the tooling, and they stamp them out like. You can find out how you'll react to any food. One of the best things is that how do my organs react to that? This thing will tell you exactly, because this finger and the distal side of the middle finger tells you about food absorption here and allergy here. And it will tell you whether you have an allergic dispensation toward that medicine. It'll tell you that anesthetic. It'll tell you how your body will react to it.
How does it tell you?
By making an indication.
What?
There's an indication on a meter and on a chart. And when you learn how to read the meter and learn how to read the chart, which ought in approximately 1 minute, you can tell whether you're going to have an allergic reaction or not. Another thing we found was out of an major university's animal husbandry department, we found that there are 33 substances that all humans and all animals are allergic to. And we found out that we can measure here, and we can find out exactly, if you have allergies, exactly what you're allergic to. And then we can take that material and prepare it homeopathically and give you a couple drops under the tongue, and that allergy will disappear entirely. And then after a period of time, it may come back, and we'll find that you need a homeopathic remedy of a different, what they call potency or strength. And then you take that. And sometimes it takes you 3 or 4 days to chase this thing around and find out exactly what you need. But eventually, you'll get to an end point, and you won't have that allergy. And as far as I know, when we've tested people now for 28 years, nobody's ever had an allergy come back.
Wow.
And we're dealing strictly with an informational system here that modern science refuses to do, but it doesn't seem to make much difference to those people who had allergies and don't, that modern science doesn't like it. It doesn't fit their paradigm, which is wrong.
I just want to say on camera here that what we are very clear about, having spent quite some time talking with you, that you're not trying to get rich through any of this. You want to make this technology available.
I have no need to make any money. The only reason I want to build the things is so they're built right, because that lets the doctor do the treatment for much less, or the diagnoses for much less money. And remember, the doctor only uses us to help him in making his diagnoses. Diagnoses can't be made by a machine, only made by a doctor.
Yeah.
And that's why in the beginning we only sold them to card-carrying AMA, card-carrying MDs. Then we sold a few to chiropractors. We sold a few of them to osteopaths, a few of them to naturopaths, and then 18 years ago there were about 350 veterinarians using them. And they were working perfectly. They could find out what problems animals had and how to solve the problem. Point in my life that the only thing I can do now to make my life worthwhile is to share the wisdom that I've obtained as a stone rolling through this interesting experience of life on Earth.